So much. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really liked talking to Brandon all the time. Literally, we talk like almost every single day. We're texting back and forth, talking about different things and YouTube strategy and chosen stuff and a bunch of other stuff. So very, very cool to have you guys here and talk through it. But let's go ahead and walk through this video by Dallas Jenkins that he put out a little while ago, 4 days ago, and just hear from him exactly what he's thinking, where he's at, and kind of give our response to that. You know, you've heard my thoughts about the whole situation and what I think. Here's kind of Dallas's response, and to talk a little bit more about kind of where we were coming from. Me and Brandon had a pretty long discussion with Dallas. Brandon even had a longer discussion with him by himself, and it was just getting to the heart of like, okay, Dallas, like where are you coming from? You know, what is the understanding of what you're talking about here? Did this come from the Book of Mormon? All of that kind of stuff. And obviously it did not come from the Book of Mormon. He's never read the Book of Mormon. And he said to us similar things that he's going to say in this video. But one of the major things that he said, even during our live stream, and he texted me personally, was that this line is just meant to be a good movie line, essentially. You know, it's like a big hit line in a show where this is going to be a line that people remember because it hits really, really hard. And it's going to be important for the season. But it's not meant to be this thing that you come in and study, right? While he does think that it is theologically sound, and like we talked about in this live stream as well, we think it's theologically sound for the most part as well. It's just, maybe it's not something that I would have done, right? Because I have different opinions on how I would say things, and I think it could be possibly a little bit confusing, but here's Dallas's kind of his own words on what the situation is about, and we'll talk through that. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'll bring those up as we go through.
So, have you seen our Season 3 trailer? Heard anything about it? So our Season 3 trailer comes out. It's going really well, getting a fantastic response. It's the #1 trending video on YouTube for over a day, which is really cool. And one of the key moments in the trailer, the thing that gets the most response by far, is that halfway through the trailer, a Pharisee approaches Jesus in the synagogue and says, "Jesus, if you do not renounce your words, we will have no choice but to follow the law of Moses." And Jesus says, "I am the law of Moses." People were cheering in their response videos. People were commenting to us saying, "Oh my gosh, I was crying. I was so excited." Well, after a day or two, things start to shift just a little bit because there's a couple of posts and some YouTube videos saying, "This line proves that the chosen is actually influenced by outsiders, and that Dallas is actually quoting from the Book of Mormon."
Yeah, just a couple of videos. Let me actually search real fast. How many of these videos started to come up? The chosen Mormon quote. Let's just see in the past little while. We got 1, 2, 3. Oop, why isn't this working? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and it just keeps on going. So there's a ton of these response videos that came out after the trailer was done, right? And so there's a bunch of people, and like we talked about in our last live stream just a second ago, which if you haven't seen, I'm probably going to separate these into 2 separate videos after the fact. But if you want to go watch that live stream, basically me and Brandon Robbins had a long discussion about this line, and like we talked about in there, like I'm really tired of seeing so many of these like watchdogs that are like attacking other Christians for like trying to do what God has asked them to do. And I'm not saying that Dallas is infallible. I'm not saying that he will be forever perfect and he'll never do anything wrong. In fact, I'm counting that he's going to do something wrong. And when he does, like, it's not something that I'm going to attack him for, but it's something that we can walk through and we can have a discussion about, right? And yeah, it's something that is really important to me, that we don't just attack other Christians, that we walk alongside them, we have discussion, and it irritates me when that's not the case.
Influence, this is proving what we've been saying all along. Now, I'm going to address that in just a minute, but I do want to talk briefly about the fact that there's something I think larger for us here, and about how I and we as the chosen respond when things like this happen. Now, I'm not talking about regular disagreement. There's a lot of very fair-minded, well-intentioned people who will disagree with us about things in the chosen all the time. It happens on a daily basis. Obviously, you're doing a show about Jesus, it's going to happen. I'm not talking about that because that's healthy, that's wonderful. I'm talking about these two situations that I'm about to describe. One is when someone says something outright untrue about you. That's pretty common as well when it comes to the chosen. You'll see on YouTube videos the title, Dallas Jenkins said, quote, blank, unquote, and it's not something I actually said. You'll see people saying like what they're doing in this situation, saying Dallas took from the Book of Mormon, or the chosen is unduly influenced by outside influences, whatever. So we're talking about when someone says something outright untrue about you, or when people do what I call mind reading. And this is extraordinarily toxic. And never do this when you're in an argument, especially with your spouse. Never do it publicly on social media. But this is when someone says, they are thinking this. This is what they are doing. This is what they are trying to do.
Right.
Anytime that someone is reading your mind or heart, it's something you really got to just ignore and make sure you never do. But I'm talking about in those two.
Yeah, this is why I try to be as clear as I possibly can when it comes to our YouTube videos and kind of what we talk about. I want to be as clear as possible. You know, when we talk about things like hard topics, even like transgender issues or homosexuality or just sin in general, right? Alcoholism or drug use or lying. Like I try to be as clear as possible where I sit on those things. And when I can't be because I don't have a full understanding, I let you know that, right? And so yeah, how Dallas kind of like reads through this stuff, I think it's important. I think it's important that we take a stance of like first of all, we give people the benefit of the doubt, right? First of all, we know that people are going to fail. We know that people are not perfect. None of us is Jesus, right? All of us has sin. All of us has fallen. All of us, have selfish intentions a lot of the times. And so as we look at this, like we need to understand that Dallas is no different, that the team is no different. They are broken and flawed people. And if they do make a mistake, then we talk through that, right? And there could be a time on this channel when I call out something, right? But I'm going to do it in love, and I'm going to do it in kindness, and I'm going to do it from a place of I want to see the chosen at the best of its possible output, right? And I wouldn't want to see things that would distract from that come into the show or into the team or whatever. But I agree mostly with what he's kind of talking about here, where he's talking about how he interacts with these people that disagree or that just plain attack, for sure.
Cases, how do we respond? Well, there's a few things that I try to do that I think follow biblical principles in general. But number one is we don't go to their circle, their turf. If they make a post on their pages, we're not going to go there. I'm not going to go there and start trying to defend myself or argue the point over there, because what you say is never going to be enough anyway. It opens you up to far more, and there ends up being back and forth and you end up going down a rabbit hole. I want to do it where people actually care about what I'm going to say, and that we're going to actually have a healthy exchange, and they're going to actually take the time to hear you out. And because you're not going to convince people in their circle of influence or their turf. So we try to do it on our turf as much as possible.
Have you ever dealt with that with a person? I know I definitely have, for sure. Throughout my life, I've dealt with a lot of people who you try to explain to them where you're coming from, and they just completely shut it down and don't take anything that you say as helpful or truth or that it has any validity at all, right? I think that is one of the most dangerous mindsets that you can possibly have in terms of like, people disagreeing with you or whatever. Like, it's fine. You can disagree with me. Happens every single day on this channel, right? We get comments every single day of people that disagree with me about theological stuff. They disagree with me about how Christ lived his life. They disagree with me about a lot of different things. But I can't let that affect me, and I can't go off on a attacking spree through my comment section, right? Just like yelling at these people. They're allowed to have the opinions that they have. I just don't share them, right? And I would hope that you would have the same respect to me if you disagree with me, that we can still be friends and we can still be cordial and we can still walk together, even if we disagree on something, right? As long as it's not something that is a pillar of our faith, like Jesus is fully God and fully man, right? If you say that that's wrong, I have an issue with that, and we'll have a conversation about that. But there are some other things that I would let slide for sure, because they just don't matter when it comes to salvation and the heart of what God wants us to see.
Second, I actually don't try to argue with them. They've made their minds up. They've made the public assertion. The chances of them apologizing or taking it back or saying, "Oh, good point. I guess you say that you're not thinking this, or that you didn't say this. I guess I was wrong. I'm gonna." That's extraordinarily rare, and so I don't even really try. Also, I don't worry about misperception or misunderstandings. I worry about how things are. I worry about what things are. I worry about what's true. Worrying about what may be misunderstood or what a wrong perception about something that you say is really going to be crippling. And I really try to focus on actually what's true and what exactly I said and what exactly I'm doing, because that's ultimately what matters more. And
this is an interesting take too, because yes, I agree with him, but also I was in the ministry for 10 years and everybody's perception of me was a big factor in my job, right? The perception of how I, led worship, or the perception of, how I prayed or whatever else. Like, there's just so many little things that the perception was such a big part of my job, because if the perception was off and people would attack me behind the scenes, it did affect my day-to-day, right? Like it would kind of lower expectations from my higher ups, and other people would have different perspectives because of these people's wrong perspectives. I think Dallas is in a bubble, which is great for him and for the Chosen, because he can kind of separate himself out from that kind of stuff. And he has a lot of supporters that are going to back him through all this hard stuff as well, right? So I think that's important that, I don't know, he kind of walks through that and sees, where these people are coming from and how he can deal with them to the best of his ability. And sometimes the way that he deals with them best is just by completely ignoring them and knowing that he's, focused on the truth of what he meant and what he is going through.
And if you start worrying about misunderstandings or how people might perceive you incorrectly, there's really no room then for nuance, and there's no room for art. There's no room for figures of speech. You're just saying things so straightforward that, especially when it comes to art, there's really no life in it. But again, it's a very important principle to worry about truth far more than what people might misunderstand, because that's going to happen no matter what. Now, here's the most important thing. I really don't care about avoiding criticism or trying to gain praise. See, I got to a point a couple of years ago where
Now, we've all seen this from Dallas, right? Like, he's very adamant that like things don't bother him or it doesn't affect him. And I think everything affects us to a point, but I think Dallas does, he makes it a point to try to ignore these things and to try to move forward and to focus on the truth, like he said. I think it's a really, really big issue for him.
God took away any desire to please, any desire to people please. And I started to replace any narcissistic thoughts that I had or desire, what the Bible calls fear of man, any desire to get affirmation. I started to replace those thoughts with Scripture. And it became a little bit of a superpower. And I think it's a really important principle. When you don't do things to please people or avoid criticism, you really start doing things to please God. And that's an extraordinarily important principle. And when it comes to the Chosen, never once have I actually said or done something, never once have we as a team said or done something to try to avoid criticism or to gain more praise. And then the second thing that happens if you can get to a point where you're not trying to people please, besides the fact that you end up not doing things to avoid criticism or gain praise, is it allows you to not care when things like this happen. I can't be distracted from the work. I can't be distracted but from in trying to change the work. And that's another thing that is really important, is that once you've said something or done something that you really believe is right and that you believe has pleased God, and you've got people around you, like in our case, we've got Bible consultants and I've got my wife and I've got accountability partners. And
Amanda's actually like 80% of the reason why I trust that Dallas will be okay in the future. She just seems super solid, and I think that she would be the one to kind of put him in his place if he put something really, really horrible, in one of the episodes or something like that. I definitely trust her to, just like my wife does for me, to keep Dallas in line for sure.
Pastors, and when I've done something that I believe is honoring to God and accurate to the character of Jesus in the Gospels, or something that we post on social media, well, then when there's criticism or even when there's abnormal praise, it doesn't impact you.
Yeah, this is to an extreme on YouTube, I think, and Dallas obviously is in that realm where, like, you know, someone will praise me on this video and then they'll completely trash me on the next video, and I can't allow that to sway how I make videos or what I do or how I think about the Bible even, right? Because if I do, then I'm just becoming a pawn in this game where people can just manipulate me however they want, and that's not what we want, for sure.
And so I'm not motivated by those things. And that's why when something like this happens, it really isn't an emotional hit. And it's why we don't change things just because we've gotten criticism or abnormal praise, because that's just not why we do it. Now, all that to say, I don't believe you would want me to be making the show trying to avoid criticism or gain more praise. If I'm sitting there writing with my co-writers, or we're directing I'm directing the film, and I'm really just trying to make sure that I don't do anything that could upset the apple cart. That would make...
Yeah, Jesus upset the apple cart all the time, right? Like, he offended people all the time. So you shouldn't be afraid to do that, for sure.
For a pretty boring show, or just trying to do the very best we can to tell an extraordinary, explosive story, a very meaningful story. And you don't want me crippled by that kind of stuff. Now, to sum up this issue in general, I don't want to take too much time on it, but I do think there are enough people who have been confused by it that I do want to address it. So number one, of course, I'm not quoting from the Book of Mormon. I've never read the Book of Mormon. The first time I spent too much time, I shouldn't take too much time, any time on this, was after people started saying I was quoting from the Book of Mormon. So I went and checked it out. I'm like, actually, I'm not. It's not the same quote. But even if it was...
The quote in itself, if you actually look at the Book of Mormon in the Book of Nephi or whatever, it's not exactly the same. Like, it's talking about a different law, and it's kind of like a... I don't know, I'm not a Book of Mormon scholar for sure, but it's definitely talking about something that's slightly different, and it's not an exact quote anyway.
Doesn't really matter, because I still stand by the quote.
You would watch the Book of Mormon for sure, Megan. You seem like the musical person for sure.
You know who also said the same thing? Charles Spurgeon, one of the great theologians of all time. Evangelical theologian, who said Christ is the law incarnate. And of course, no one came out and publicly was saying Dallas Jenkins just took from Charles Spurgeon. But here's the spoiler alert. I wasn't taking from either of them. It's not that revolutionary of a concept, which I'll explain in just a moment. And another thing is my consultants, we have a Messianic Jewish rabbi and a evangelical scholar, New Testament scholar, and they read my scripts. I have pastors and I have friends.
I would like to hear the rabbi's thoughts on this line and how he kind of like thought through this as he saw it. I know he's disagreed with some things in the past, but yeah, I think it would be really interesting to see the roundtable on this specifically. If they do talk about this specifically, I think that'd be really, really cool.
And who we take this stuff very, very seriously. And anytime Jesus is speaking, we think, we want to make sure that we reflect the character of Jesus in the Gospels. They had no problem with it. And so when people are saying, trying to explain to me why it's wrong, trust me, we've already thought through these things. We take these things seriously in advance. So someone just commenting on YouTube isn't just going to make us go, oh my goodness, we never thought of that.
I mean, imagine someone just comments on YouTube and they change the whole show. Like, of course that's not going to happen. That's not how this channel works. It's not how The Chosen works. You guys have the ability to continue to give us views and to continue to make, this channel bigger and have more influence, but you don't have the ability to change what I think, right? And how I study and the truth of the situation, for sure. But I love you anyway.
So I do believe that it's theologically plausible, if depending on what word you want to use. But we do believe that it's theologically accurate. Christ is the Word. Christ is above all. He created all. He's the fulfillment of the law. He's the replacement of the law. Now, that's not to do away with the law. He didn't do away with the law. In fact, he actually says that. But Christ is the ultimate authority.
He encompasses the law, right? Like, the fulfillment is where we should be focusing on, because, like, I don't like the word replacement. I'm not sure exactly why he used that, but I would say the fulfillment for sure. I like the encompassing. I think that makes sense. Replacement is to say that it's like taking something out and replacing it with something else. So I don't think that's necessarily exactly accurate.
And So when he says, I am the law, it's kind of the equivalent. It's in many ways, it's a figure of speech, of course, because Christ didn't actually say these exact words in Scripture. We don't know if he said something like that or not, but we think that it's certainly possible. But it's like when an ultimate authority goes to someone's house, and let's say they're confronting a citizen, and the citizen says, I'm going to call the police. I want to talk to the police. If that person says, bro, I am the police. Now, they're not actually saying,
yeah, that's what Jesus should have said. He should have said, bro, I am the law.
they're the police. They're saying, I am your ultimate authority. What you think is the ultimate authority, what you are trying to appeal to, that's me. I'm replacing what you put in your mind as the ultimate law. I am what you think is the law. Now, that's what Jesus is doing in this scene. And what's ironic about this controversy is that when you watch the entire scene, it's obviously taken from the time when Jesus is in Nazareth preaching in the synagogue. And in this scene in the show, it is by far the most explicit portrayal of Jesus asserting his lordship, asserting his sole role as Savior, as responsible for your salvation, that the show has ever had. It's him outright saying, your religion doesn't save you. Your law doesn't save you. Your traditions don't save you. Only I save you. And that's what's funny about this thing is that scene, I believe, most people who watch it will actually be extremely excited about this because The Chosen is making such a bold assertion.
Yeah, it's a declaration that hasn't been quite made in The Chosen yet, right? So as a Christian, it definitely makes me feel better understanding, that the Christ that I see in Scripture, the Christ that I have a relationship with, like, would be represented in this way for sure. I think it's a good thing overall. The scene as a whole.
Quoting Jesus from the Gospels, from that famous scene that takes place in Nazareth. And so when the Pharisees are not in that moment are so horrified and shocked and saying, we're going to assert the law of Moses because the law of Moses says that false prophets must die. And Jesus is saying, I am the law of Moses. Now, he's not only saying, I am the fulfillment of the law of Moses, which I believe is similar to, if not the exact same thing as I am the law of Moses, but he's saying, I am your authority. I am asserting my lordship and my kingship, and that's why we stand behind the line. So that's it. Just wanted to share that. And because I do think there's something more than just this particular issue. I think it's a larger principle in general of how to handle and address things.
Sure. How do we handle things? How do we address things as they come up in terms of criticism, in terms of people attacking us, right? Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Real quick before we go, I've got a couple of things to share with you. First of all, if you want to support us on this channel, of course, you can go to our Patreon. It's always one of the first links in our description down below. This is a massive, massive, massive way that you can help support this channel. This is my full-time job now, so this is what I focus on every single day is making videos for you guys, and we've got some killer videos coming up into the end of this year, obviously The Chosen, into the next year. We've got a bunch of stuff, including a 2-week Israel trip, which you guys will be riding along with for every single day. It's going to be amazing. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, and that would be a big help. It's going to be amazing. Also, if you want to go to Israel in 2024, we have another trip that's going to be coming up. I don't have the details in the description down below, but actually go check because I'll try to get them there. Anyway, love you guys very much. You guys have an amazing, amazing day, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace. Vanessa says peace.